Hey guys, welcome to my nightmare. That's right, I wasn't going to film this, but I decided to do it anyway because I figured I'd wrap the series up so we'd have a whole series of start to finish on these signs that I've been making. Now, I went ahead and I pre-painted 6 out of 7 of these signs, but I wanted you to see the experience I went through to do those first 6. It has been hellish. I thought maybe because it was a larger scale, it'd be easier to work with larger brushes. It's not. Trying to get in those little nooks and crannies, you need a smaller brush. So I want to show you my nightmare process. So first off, what I like to do is take black acrylic paint and half Mod Podge, half and half. Mix them together, you end up with a little concoction like this that you keep in a jar. I don't know where the cover to this is, but I'm almost done with this, so I figured I'd just wrap this up. We would film this, and then I could just throw this away when I was done, because I'm not going to try to keep it. Anyway, this creates a little bit of a seal so that the weather, the elements don't really get to it. I guess you could probably do a Mod Podge at the very end instead, but for my purposes, this just quickens the deal. This has been a nightmare doing these though. These little nooks and crannies are just tough to get into. And I did find out, I want to move this before I get paint on this. One thing I did discover, the easiest way to do this, and I didn't discover till about the second to last one I was doing, is do the entire edge. Don't even worry about the top. You can get your hands all over it. If it gets icky, doesn't matter. You can basically get that seal around the edges, make sure you get all the little nooks and crannies, and then at the very end, you just come across and do the top, make sure there's nothing dripping down. Later on, I will go back and paint the back of these solid black, but I don't think we need to film that. Without further ado, let's begin. I'm going to do the smart thing, and I'm going to start with a very small brush at first, like about a 1-inch brush. I will stop this as we go along if I have something witty or important to say. Other than that, I'll see you at the end. Holy shit, this is way easier. Don't worry about this going on thick too. That's not going to hurt it at all. You just don't want it dripping off of the board. But you know, this coat, especially on this pink stuff, sometimes under the wrong lighting, it's hard to tell if you've missed a spot. And later on, when you think the project's done, you're like, shit. Do I go back and fix it or just ignore it? 9 out of 10 times I just ignore it because you can't really see it anyway unless you're looking for it. However, in this case, it is a job. It's not something I'm doing for Dungeons and Dragons. I just caught myself doing something there. On the other ones, what I've been doing is kind of just going over, because I only used a big brush on the old ones. And then I would go back the other way. And it's really important because like those little nooks and crannies, you can miss them real easy. If you think you got something, you probably missed something. Ooh, I already got paint on my pants. This is the first day I've worn long pants. I've worn jeans once this year, actually. And I immediately got black paint on them. So, and I never wear these pants. But I wanted to wear cargo pants because I have a lot of shit that I carry. God, I really wish I had gone with the small brush just right from the get-go. I will say it is relaxing this time. This is so much easier, and I was out at the kitchen table trying to, I mean, there's 6 of them. My entire kitchen table is taken over by these things right now. But I wanted to get them painted so that I could film the next step to this, which is really where the fun kicks in. Like, sure, texturizing is great. Oh, I love working with the heat tool. But what it really boils down to, my favorite part of all of this is the painting. And this is basically just like preparing your canvas, and this isn't fun. But it is relaxing when it's, I had dogs and cats out there, totally anarchy. And the dog kept putting the koosh ball on my knee, and I felt really bad because, I mean, normally I would have thrown it for him because he doesn't usually leave it. He usually just demands that you rip it from his mouth. Well, he doesn't demand it, but that's usually how it works out. So when I came in here, it was hot as hell because, oh, check this out. Oh, I can't. Can I? Yes, I can. Alexa, turn my studio off. Alexa, turn my studio on.
Okay.
Alright, note to self. Apparently when the HDMI is hooked up to the camera and you tell your studio to turn off, it also turns the camera, well, it stops recording for some reason. I don't understand that, but I had to get up and turn everything, well, I didn't have to turn everything back on, I just had to start it recording again. At first I thought I hadn't recorded the whole beginning of that, which I would have pretty much just shot myself in the face. No, I would have thrown myself in the creek. Let the animals have at me tonight. Oh, what a meal they would have. Okay, we're just about done with the edges. Sweet Mildred. At the very end, after I'm done with the edges, I'm not even going to check this because I'm pretty confident it came out okay. I like to just go around and start. It'll pick up all the loose paint that came over the top, so it doesn't look all bumpy around the edges. Excellent. That's the only thing is maneuvering this thing is such a bitch. It's a bitch. Stop being a bitch. Okay, done with the little brush. I guess I'm just going to use the brush I've been using for the other ones because it's already wet and no sense in dirtying another brush. This is going to be just enough to finish this, I think. Maybe a little extra. I do wish I had a cover for that. I don't normally keep jars because when I keep jars, 8 months later, I go and I have 100 jars that are all cleaned off and peeled, and I'm like, oh great, I've got these. What am I going to do with them? And then I end up having to recycle them. And it's tough to recycle glass around here, so I usually don't keep jars. But in this case, it would be perfect because, I don't know, it would be nice to save this stuff because I use it all the time in these projects. I haven't been doing a lot with crafting because I've just had no time for crafting. And that's the only reason why this is getting filmed today is because it allows me to not only put something out there that I think some people could find enjoyable, but it also allows me to get my work done. Anytime I can incorporate those two, it's a win. This is about done here. Okay, so later on, like I said, I will go back and I will paint the back of this a solid black. But the next step is where things get fun. Now, there is a reason why I pre-painted the other 6 of these. It was because I'm a genius. Now, they are nice and dry, waiting for me out in the kitchen, and we can move on to phase 2, just like that. And just like that, nothing has changed whatsoever. Alright, maybe I didn't get right to painting. I had a million things to do today, so hear me out. Now, here's where the magic starts. We've got 4 different colors here. We're going to start, I'll put them up on the screen for anybody following along at home. A la Bob Ross. Oh, Lord Jesus Christ in heaven. Okay, so we're going to start with Burnt Umber. And it's going to not look like I'm doing anything to the board when I'm painting this on, because this is a very dark brown. What this is doing a few things. It's going to add some dark wood tones that you're not going to see until it dries. And you're also going to see the ridges start to come to life here. We're only going to do the tops of these, but it's almost an immediate result. And the nice thing about going about 70 to 75% of this over this is that it's going to cover any mistakes we missed. So let me show you how we do this. You'd like to think it would be as simple as just painting it on there, but it's not. We're using a dry brush technique here. Brush starts dry, and we're going to wipe about half of the paint that we put on the brush off of the brush, because we don't want it to cover everything. Every brush stroke should leave a little bit of the black underneath. And here we go. You're not going to be able to see a lot of this, but I'll hold it up after each layer that I put on. The nice thing about this whole dry brushing thing is that it dries really quick. It doesn't stay wet very long, so you're able to move on to the next color pretty quickly. You just want to move it over the top of it, like gently brushing the top of it. And like I said, you do want to get a lot on this layer. This isn't your... You'll see where the highlights really start to come in when we get to the lighter colors. Unfortunately, it takes a little while to get there because the first 2 colors are pretty dark and you can't see a lot of change. And actually, with this lighting in here, it's making it very difficult. which you would think it wouldn't be too bad. We've got big studio lights in here, making it nice and easy for us to see, but it's not. Creating a weird reflection. Okay, there we go. All right. I will skip around in this video too, and if I have something important to say or point out, I will do so. But like I said, a lot of this, you just want to cover most of it that you've already put down. The brush can be a little wetter on this layer, and you're going to want to dry it even... you're going to want to remove more and more paint with each layer that you do. So right now you can see it looks like oh shit. It looks like I'm removing a lot, but good Lord. This is why I don't do craft tutorial videos. It's funny, I started to tell you a story in the last video, and I'll finish it now. The reason why I stopped doing Nerdcraft was because filming is its own process in and of itself. Getting the cameras right, getting the lighting right, making sure the microphone is on, making sure the fan is off. And to top that off, like trying to create something beyond whatever content I'm speaking about in the video, it's really hard. And I lose concentration on one thing or the other, and I find that I'm either not talking about painting or I forget that I'm filming. I'm gonna try to stand up for this. Yeah, oh yeah, dirty paint. We're just gonna pour out a little bit more of that brown umber. We're about there, we're almost there. I never thought I'd find a practical use for using this insulation foam. Good Lord, whatever this stuff is called. And then I started talking to Danny Gibbons, the owner of the bookstore, and I just got to thinking. He said he wanted something, he was coming up with a unique idea, and da-da-da-da. One thing led to another. I thought, you know what? Why would you pay somebody to create these in wood when I could do the same thing for probably a quarter of the cost? And the results are just as, probably better than you'd get with wood. Unless you're really good at painting, which I am not good at painting. You know who's good at painting? My good friend Artie T. Nyman. That's right. I've known Artie for quite a few years, and he's inspired me over these last few months to do a little bit more with art in general. And life. All right. I think I'm done with the burnt umber coat. So take a look at this. That's probably just the exact amount of coverage I was trying to get on that. It's about 70%. It's really dark, and as it dries, it's actually drying darker. I thought it dried lighter for some reason. But either way, yeah, I've achieved with that first layer exactly what I wanted to do. Now, here's the cool thing. I'm just going to wipe right on this paper towel as much of that brown off, not being very careful about how I'm treating the brush either. This brush has actually been quite faithful to me, and I've bashed the hell out of it with some of the projects I've done, and it still always seems to come back as long as I clean it. Okay, so now we are going to move on to the brown oxide. I would say this is about 80% dry already. I'm just going to air it out for a minute. And that's how you professionally dry pink foam insulation, styrofoam. Good God, I can't remember what the hell we're working with here. Okay, brown oxide. This may have been the one I wanted to put on first. Hang on. Brown oxide, it is an acrylic paint, but nonetheless, there's something different about it. There's a consistency that's a little heavier. I can't begin to explain it. I've bought tons of these paints through the years. I can probably safely say hundreds of these paints through the years. It's funny, you can walk in and spend $20, $30 on a bottle of like great paint, or you can spend 50 cents and, to be honest, get what you can afford. I'm sure that the more expensive stuff definitely has some qualities about it that outweighs the cheapness of this stuff here. However, if you can't afford something, you create art with whatever you have around you. That's pretty profound. Okay, back to the brown oxide. Oh, oh, you bitch. Yeah, you dirty dog. This is exactly where I want this to go. So this layer, we're going to go about 50%, maybe a little bit more just because that first layer is so dark. But I don't know if you can tell already, but if you look up in this corner here, you can kind of see where it's already starting to lighten up. So this is the highlight. So mainly I want to create almost like a grain or the side of a tree when you look at the bark. That's kind of what I'm looking for. However, I'm also creating something not of this world. So I'm calling these highlight colors because they are highlight colors because I'm going from a dark to a light. I always want to do that too, by the way, in case you didn't know that one. Okay, let's move along. Nice thing about this technique too is if you screw it up really bad, which is hard to do, you can always go back and you know, just do a layer of black again or do a layer of, you know, brown again, wherever you were at last, and kind of cover up those mistakes. You don't really have to repaint the whole thing. It's just a matter of hitting it there, here and there. Get a little too light somewhere, just go back, put a little dark in, and then let it dry, and you can go ahead and move on to your next color. The nice thing about working with this stuff, and a really good way to kind of make things prominent, is hit those edges a little harder, especially where you want the kind of lights to be hitting. And it makes just the edges pop because it's on a solid black edge, so it just looks really neat. Okay. Too much paint, but that's all right. Brush it around. Brush it around. That's what you do for your lover. Sometimes I tend to go a little too light with this second coat because I don't want to lose much of that dark, but then I find myself later on end up using too much of the lighter colors because I haven't added enough of the medium to begin with. So we might go for about a 60% coverage here. I really should have brought a palette or something in to hold this paint. But you don't need all those little things. If you want to create art, you don't need to go buy a super expensive palette or anything. Just grab a plate or whatever. This acrylic paint comes off of everything pretty well. Clothes, not so much. But, you know, it'll come right off of this table easily. Just going to try to get whatever's left here of this paint. So you can already tell, like I was saying at the beginning when I was adding this second tone here, where it's light, you can really see where it's kind of popping out. Unfortunately, it's drying really dark, so all this light stuff that you're seeing is going to go away, and it'll be nice. It'll give a nice mottled look to it. Muddled in the mire look. Doesn't really matter. Let me cool this one down for a second. So now we've got our first two coats of paint on. Now we're really going to start moving into some of the lighter colors. Okay, now we're back to a thinner paint. That last one, for some reason, it's a really thick paint, that oxide. It must be something that they use it to give it its color, its unique color. This is now Territorial Pissings. No, it's Territorial Beige. Beige. You're putting less and less on with each coat. So let me try to get this clean. I used to do a lot of three-dimensional stuff, and this just seemed to hug everything right. So now you're looking at about 30% paint on the brush that you originally put on. And this is where you got to be careful because it looks cool. Like, this is where the change starts happening, where the magic starts coming in. Like, now you're starting to see some coverage, whereas before the first two layers were that you could see it going on, but it was light. Or I shouldn't say it's light, but the difference was very minor. So I will do this coat, and then I'll show you, and we'll do the last coat. When you start adding the lights on top of the darks, it really brings out the grain that we created with the cars and with the tin foil. And you'll see that, especially after this color goes on. With the first two coats, I kind of consider them basically just, creating your base. Like it's a tree. It's probably more gray than brown a tree if you really looked closely at a tree. But the mind sees what the eye doesn't sometimes. And I think sometimes when we go to draw pictures as artists, if you're an artist, there's certain things that in our heads we make assumptions about. And until you start really studying life, I think, and looking at things that your whatever your subject might be, until you really start doing that, you don't notice things like that. The minor little things like the fact that a tree really isn't brown. I mean, some trees are brown. They all have a little bit of brown in them, but who doesn't? Oh, yeah. Oh, make it sexy. Okay. Sometimes you get to step back and take a look at it. Make sure you're not overdoing it. What I'm doing here too is, I don't know if you've noticed, but these strokes are kind of following that grain I created with the car wheels. For no particular reason whatsoever. This is my world, and in my world, the colors just seem to flow with the grain. Alright, I think we're done with that layer. Yeah, see, now you can see like the dynamics of everything coming out here, and you can see why we do the things we do and how we do the things we do here on the Vodkraft. Sometimes I will at the very end hit it with a little bit of white, but I don't think I'm going to do that in this case. This is khaki, and it is a little bit lighter than the territorial beige, and it's perfect for just little tiny highlights here and there. Sometimes I go overboard and it just looks good and I don't really care in the end. Like I said, this is our world that this tree came from. This isn't an oak tree, it's not a pine tree, it's not anything that we know of. This came from a tree. Could be a Valenwood tree. Where do Valenwood trees come from? Put that in the comments below and smoke it. Alright, last layer. And we're just going to quickly, gently tap here and there. Get those edges. Like I said, those edges just pop. And there's nothing stopping me from blending these two. If you find like you've gone over it, it's a little too light, just go ahead and mix the previous color in there and take out some of that brightness. But these are going to be in a relatively dark room, so I don't want them to be super dark, but I don't want to lose a lot of the contrast we have here either. So we're going to hit the edges really good. And just keep it moving with the grain. Kind of leaving some of the dark areas completely untouched. Going over a little bit of them here and there. You know, I really think Bob Ross had it right when he said, there are no mistakes, only happy accidents. And it's really true. And the more you're willing to take the chance and try new things out, the more you learn he was right. Happy accidents sometimes lead to the most coolest end results you can imagine. Anywho, that is my final coat for this, I believe. I'm going to compare it to the last one because I do think that the last one's a little bit lighter. And I do want to keep them relatively consistent. But that's it. From cutting the large piece of foam down into the smaller pieces, then using the heat wire, the tool, to cut all our edges and make it all neat, to then rolling it out with the aluminum foil and rolling it over with the cars, we've gone from basically just a flat pink piece of foam to this. And another little tip for you guys, if you are in a situation where you need to do this to make a sign, which I don't imagine you ever will be, but should you find yourself there, so maybe you're a local business owner and you want to try this out for yourself, there are a million techniques. Just go out on the YouTubes and look it up. You'll find a bunch of people doing stuff with foam, and similar to what I do, very different than what I do. And remember, if you are creating signs, get your letters, lay them out. Make sure they fit before you start adhering them down. In this case, I'm not going to be handling that part of this job, so I'll pass this along. walk away and all is said and done. But I've had a really good time creating these, and I'm going to go ahead and finish up the rest of these so I can bring them into work and show them what I got.
Show me what you got.
Anyway, for all of us here at the Vodkast, to all of you there at home, thank you for stopping by. We've really enjoyed doing this series, and if you guys like it and want to see more, put it in the comments below. I know I said I wasn't going to do this video because there were no comments saying you should do a painting video. However, I wanted the full series in completion so that I could have something to share with you, start to finish project. So once again, thank you guys for stopping by, and I'll catch you guys a little bit further on down the road. Goodbye.